Planning the daily class session. This is part 1 in the teaching method series. I'm Dr. Grady Roberts from the University of Florida. This presentation will be guided by 3 essential questions. 1, what's the difference between a unit plan and a daily plan? 2, what should be planned for each daily class session? And 3, what should be considered when planning for a daily class session? First, what's the difference between a unit plan and a daily plan? A unit plan is for several weeks of instruction, whereas a daily plan by definition is for one class session. A unit plan probably has very detailed content. A daily plan probably just has an outline of the content for that specific day. A unit plan is going to be guided by broad essential questions, where a daily plan is going to be guided by very specific essential questions. A daily plan is also going to include the instructions for the specific learning activities. A unit plan can be created well in advance. Daily plans are created and adjusted daily based on how far you got the previous day and how far you want to go today. So when you're planning that single daily session, it's important to note that every daily session has to have 3 components. You need to have an introduction, which we will call a preflection. You need to have a series of learning activities, and my rule of thumb is to aim for 3. And then you need to have a summary or a reflection at the end. And so as you're planning a daily session, every session must have an introduction, several learning activities, and then a summary, or a preflection, several learning activities, and a reflection. It's important to note that. So when we look at the preflection or the introduction, it really covers 2 key pieces. 1, what did we do yesterday? So it's important to remind the learners about what you did the previous day. And second, where are we going today? So it's an opportunity to refocus them and think about what did we do yesterday and where are we going today. So it's going to include things like a review from the previous lesson, and this is important to connect with the prior knowledge and experiences of your learners. And second, the preflection is going to establish interest and motivation for your learners. So it's important to get them prepared for the lesson. And so this is done with an activity that we sometimes call an interest approach, an anticipatory set, or a set induction, but it's a way of establishing that interest at the very beginning of a daily lesson. It's then going to include an outline of the class session. It's going to include the essential questions for that given day, and then it's going to include an agenda for what's going to happen during that class session. So as you're creating your daily lessons and you're developing your preflection, it's important to include all these different components in that part of the lesson. Then it's important to vary your instruction by aiming for at least 3 different learning activities during that daily class session. And we will explore the different types of learning activities in subsequent lessons or subsequent parts of this teaching method series, but we'll cover those in more detail during that part. But you want to consider things like learning modalities, multiple intelligences, Dale's cone of experience, and etc. to provide a good, well-rounded variety of learning activities for your learners. Then we wrap up a daily class session with what we call the summary or the reflection. And so that talks about where did we go today and where are we going tomorrow. And so hopefully you're starting to see a pattern where we begin a daily class session with a preflection that kind of sets things up. We go through a series of activities. Then we end a daily class session with a summary or a reflection that reviews what you did today and sets up for what you're going to do during the next class session. So a reflection could include reviewing the day's activities, and this could be built around the essential questions and the learning activities. It will also include the preview of tomorrow's class. What are the essential questions for tomorrow, and what are the activities that we're going to do tomorrow? So it's important to remember that all your daily lessons connect, almost like the links in this chain, where each daily lesson is a link in the chain, and you notice that the links in the chain overlap each other slightly. And so as you build your daily lessons on top of each other, they should overlap just a touch to make the connections so that your learners can see the connections and how everything relates together. So what are some things that you should consider when planning for the daily class session? First, let's assume that you've already have a well-developed unit plan and you're just developing a daily plan off of that unit plan. And so it's going to depend on where'd you leave off the day before. And so we talked about each of the daily lessons building on each other. Well, you can't really plan today's lesson until you know how far you went yesterday. So where'd you leave off the day before? How far do you want to go today? How much time do you have? And what are the 2 or 3 essential questions that you want your students to learn? And then finally, what learning activities are best suited to help your students answer those essential questions? So all these things should be considered when planning that daily class session. Some key points to remember. Unit plans are very detailed. Daily plans are more of an outline. Every single class session should have a preflection, 2 to 3 learning activities, and a reflection. And creating your daily plans is an ongoing process because it depends on what you did yesterday and what you want to do tomorrow. So it's too challenging and too difficult to plan these out way in advance because you really don't know how things are going to progress on a daily basis. So our essential questions for this presentation were, what's the difference between a unit plan and a daily plan? And I think we've covered that. What should be planned for in each daily class session? We talked about the 3 parts, a preflection, several learning activities, and a reflection. And we talked about the different things you should consider that will impact what you actually decide to do on a daily basis. If you'd like more information on this topic, please feel free to contact me. I've placed my contact information right here, and so you have that information if you need it. Thanks, and have a great day.